What's up, everybody? It's Lo, your host, and the rest of the Vols ATB crew with Brando, Alex, and Drew. Tonight we also have Jake Miller, host of Overtime on Fan Run Radio. If you guys missed it, last night Jake had us on his show, and tonight we are having him on our show. How are you doing tonight, Jake?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course. Likewise, back to you. We had an awesome time last night. Unfortunately, Brando and Alex are not locals, so they couldn't be on, but thanks for having us. So I guess we're just going to dive right into it and let Brando start with some recruiting stuff, and we'll just go around, let everyone have their 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess last week we kind of ended the show talking about the potential domino effect starting with the month of June or July. For July 1st, 3rd, 4th, you had July 1st, Tyree Weathersby, the defensive lineman out of Georgia. And then you had 3rd, Christian Conyer, the DB out of Kentucky of Bowling Green. We stole him from Kentucky. Got a really underrated guy in Tyree Weathersby. Got 2 out of 3. Then we get to the 4th of July. Francis, he picks Miami. Kind of, humbles down the crowd that was kind of getting hyped up and building kind of momentum. Tennessee Stool that day lands a 5-star in Jonathan Eccles. Freak athlete. He talked about that on Overtime yesterday in the beginning. A really, really huge pickup, way to kick off that. But I guess all in all, still you go 3 out of 4. Not a terrible weekend. The momentum kind of diminished there for a little bit, but Tennessee just today going more and more crazy. The godfather of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, putting in predictions for Tennessee to get Cameron Sullivan, the number 3 athlete in the 2023 class. Shemirad Umarov, a top 20 offensive lineman in the country, and Nathan Leacock, a top priority wide receiver on Tennessee's board. So all in all, the momentum still seems to be rolling. I think everyone kind of got toned down there when the Francis stuff happened, but let's be honest, guys, Tennessee's still in a really great spot recruiting-wise.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Lucas Simmons announced today that he's going to be committing on July 11th as well, which will be, Tennessee's definitely in contention with that. I think it's between us and Florida State, if I'm not mistaken. But, Steve Wiltfong even put in a crystal ball for, the Mr. Iron Curtain himself, Sham Umarov, which I think would be a huge get for us in the offensive line, especially if we're able to hold off Georgia because they've been going after him really hard over the last couple of weeks. But, like what Brando said, 3 for 4. We're still in the top 15 recruiting class. We're still, in the potential of getting 3 4-stars within the next 4 days. And I think if we get all 3, I think you could definitely see the Vols within the top 10. And like I said yesterday on Overtime, that is a massive improvement in the recruiting rankings from where we were a year ago. So trending only upwards from here.
I said this last show, I think, but anytime Brando brings up somebody that he's like, yeah, they lean in our way, I always think that we're getting them. And so then when I saw Francis commit to Miami, it did hurt. But like you said, we got to be realistic and know that we're not going to get everybody. But recruiting is still hot. Like y'all said, we got a bunch of prospects lined up who are either like heavy leans or have crystal balls to us. It was great getting the number 1 player out of Kentucky because screw the whole state of Kentucky. And that's really all I got. I ain't got much on that end. Y'all are hitting it already. So I'm just going to pass to Jake or Lo, whichever one want to go first.
Yeah, Jake, if you want to hop in.
Yeah, Jake, go ahead.
So, yeah, like you said, it was disappointing, Monday, missing out on Francis. But, in the same breath, an hour later, we get a 5-star for the 2024 class. That was great. Some of the things that are being floated around, I think you guys might have mentioned it before. Ruiz down at Miami, he's got deep pockets. And at that point, if they're really offering him what we've heard, the $4 million number, then I would rather spend that $4 million, to try to get Umarov and then build some more skilled players around him. That way you've got a more explosive offense. You're not putting all your stock into one offensive lineman.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. I get that he's obviously a good player, but there's no reason, in my opinion, to pay that much for someone like that at that position. Y'all brought it up yesterday, I believe, but I just don't see the point. I feel like we can collect a lot more talent, even 2 or 3 more players at that cost, maybe even more. And we are already lack depth as everyone knows. So there's no reason that we need to go out and spend $4 million on one person, in my opinion. especially at that position.
Yeah, and Alex talked about it, how I said, kind of thinking it was like a Tennessee lean. I think we all did. I know Jake kind of covered it on overtime. Hours before, on July 4th, July 3rd, before his announcement, Francis was wearing a Smoky shirt. Like, let's just all understand, we kind of understand, take that into mind, what kind of changed. I feel like his family, they all up to the decision said they felt more comfortable with Tennessee. But I think all in all, Miami probably made a crazy offer. If that offer and the number out there really is true, then so be it. Like y'all said, I'd rather spend that on guys like Umarov, Stanton Ramil, and if you can land Lucas Simmons, get all three of those guys at the price that you probably would have paid, for Francis, and it's a win in my books. Those are three really talented guys on the line. So,
Jake, I'm glad you brought up the Ruiz pockets because I don't know if many people know this, and this is not to talk bad about this is solely just stating facts. I have to say that, but the U Health system, the healthcare system that is a part of the University of Miami, made $400 million, I think, in the first year under the pandemic. And they are allowed to get into that money for other things. That was part of how they got Cristobal away from Oregon and how they sweetened the deal there. So there is a lot of money around Miami's program. So if those numbers are being reported, it could be true. It could very well be true. But I just wanted people to know that that is a thing, that other schools have money that they can make big offers, like I guess we've been reported to have been making. So just know that that's a thing on the outset.
And I mean, I want to give props to Miami and Coach Cristobal because the staff they built there in a short time, it's really impressive. To go out there and steal Rashada for less money than Florida offered allegedly, get a top lineman and then have 2 5-star wide receivers. Let's remember, Miami, they don't have their own stadium yet. They're still playing in the Dolphins Stadium right now. They also have half of a field of an indoor facility, where I think Tennessee has 2 fields. So, they're lacking in a lot of spots, but to still go out there and, now in the NIL era, everyone can do it. It's all legal. And if Ruiz is really, sticking, going deep in his pockets like that and landing these guys, it's going to happen a lot sooner. And I'd rather it happen to Miami and for a team that's, recruiting with teams like Florida. It's going to hurt us sometimes, but more times it's going to benefit us. So.
I mean, that's the thing that I would rather have Miami take Francis than, as you said, Florida, Georgia, any of our rivals within the conference, because exactly as you said, they're taking away that talent from Florida and Florida State and Georgia and Alabama and Auburn. So that's actually going to benefit us more because we're never going to have to face them unless in a bowl game, of course, but important games for that matter. So it sucks, but Miami's done this for years. I mean, they had that guy, Devin Shapiro, that got convicted for 15 years in federal prison for, giving their recruits prostitutes. So, I mean, that cartel money's all over Miami. So it's not surprising in the slightest. Allegedly, of course.
Allegedly.
Always.
I was going to say, Drew, you said we never will have to play Miami, but I guess we'll talk later in the show about the conference realignment. But you can't never say never in this day and age of college football. They might be our,
I mean, I guess that's true. I never thought USC and UCLA would be in the Big Ten, but here we are. So
that's so stupid. That's so dumb. I'm sorry. I just got to say it.
Do y'all want to go straight into that?
Yeah, I guess, Jake, if you want to kick that off, what's been the takeover at overtime? How are you kind of guys accepting the conference? Is it just this is what college football is now, or?
So we're on filter, bro. No censoring. Basically, we were just like, what the hell is going on? And why do you have 2 teams in LA? They're going to have to eventually schedule a game with teams like Illinois, Rutgers, Michigan State. All those teams, this makes absolutely no sense to me. But at the same time, a few days prior to that, we were talking about, college football playoff expansion, and it's you're going to have to at this point. You're going to have no choice but to expand the playoff now that this has happened. And now we're talking about teams like your 2 Arizona schools, Utah, Colorado. They're about to get poached by the Big 12 more than likely. So then you're going to leave Utah and Oregon out to dry, and then your other 4 schools, 3 schools, whatever's left in the Pac-12 at that point. I mean, they're pretty much going to have to fend for themselves. They're going to join the ACC, or you're going to have to just figure something out at that point.
Yeah. I feel mostly like it's kind of like the SEC kind of made the first move, adding Oklahoma and Texas. And then you have the Big 12 and the Pac-12 kind of saying hey, if we want to compete in the Big 10 now, Big 10 talking about making a mega conference, all these conference commissioners, they're understanding that if you want to play ball, if the day and age of college football is going to these like conference championships, having their own playoff system and having to fight for, the coverage of college football and dipping into that money that's being earned now these days, like you got to do what you got to do. And if that's, kind of ruining the whole rivalry aspect, but, bringing in big games that people want to see, not in just a bowl game to maybe happen, but, every year have them kind of being diverse with the schedule, then they're going to do what they got to do. But it's just, crazy to see like growing up and always looking forward to that one rivalry. Like now you might have to wait 3 or 4 years before you play that team again. And it's just going to feel weird.
I mean, I feel like it's inevitable though, because, this kind of like really started like when we added Texas A&M and Missouri back in 2012 of like adding the conference, because then you had Texas in talks of trying to go elsewhere. Nebraska and Colorado both left there, the Big 12 to go to different Power 5 conferences. So this is something that's been blowing up for a long time. And I think it's inevitable. And, and quite honestly, I think this is good for college football because as you get more power, these mega conferences in and have these 20, 22 team conferences, you don't really need the NCAA anymore. Like you could form your own, competition or level of college football. And it's going towards that direction anyway. I mean, we have the college football playoff where it expires after 2025, the current 14 playoffs, format they have. So, I mean, it's been going towards this direction for quite a time. Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. It's weird. I mean, it's going to be bizarre seeing UCLA play Rutgers in November, but, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said, Drew. It was weird. Like, I still don't consider Missouri an SEC school. Like, no way do they appear or act like an SEC school. So, I mean, even they're in here and it's still weird to us. So it's like, it's just something that you get used to after a while. But financially, it makes sense that UCLA and what was the other school? USC. Yeah, they went to the Big Ten because in 2020, the Big Ten made $770 million, where the Pac-12 made $534 million. So, I mean, they're chasing money. It's understandable. That's why A&M and Mizzou came to us. That's why Texas and Oklahoma are coming. So, but yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before we just fully dissolve conferences, or like you said, Drew, I guess like Big 3 conferences or whatever it comes down to will leave, make their own league, and then the NCAA will just do whatever they say because that's all of their money, which will be weird. And I was actually talking to somebody about this today, but like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like the downsides to it. If everybody's just like an independent school and they just schedule however they want. I think it benefits the schools at the top most, and then the schools in the middle, they kind of have to fend for themselves because it gets harder to get better, I guess. Because if you don't have those opportunities to play the higher up schools because they're playing each other, then maybe you don't get to prove yourself. I don't know. That was just a thought that I had, but I mean, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of shakeup because the Big 12 said that they wanted to take like half of the Pac-12 or whatever was left of them, right? Said like
16.
Yeah, I guess the Pac-10 again. So, but yeah, so I mean, it's going to change. Everything's going to change, but we'll just see how it shakes out.
Well, obviously, it's obviously a money issue or a money chasing thing, like you guys are saying. But I just kind of feel I'm very torn about it. Like, can you imagine having like 20 plus teams come to the SEC? That would be kind of out of control. Like, it could really get to that point, and then I just don't want it to be where it's all about like, oh, it's hard to even get a strong schedule or vice versa. How are these matchups going to be? How is the playoff going to be? Like, I'm excited about a playoff expansion, but it just feels like too chaotic. But then the other thing is it also leaves a lot of opportunities for each of these conferences to become mega conferences and just say, screw the NCAA, especially after NIL, where they don't even have a leg to stand on anyways after all of that ruling changed. So I don't like when anyone really has full control. Like, I'm glad the NCAA has like kind of lost some of their control, but then I can see how this could get out of hand really fast. And I don't know. So I'm really just kind of torn, but I did want to get everyone's thoughts on like teams that we would like to eventually see added into the SEC or, whatever other conferences you think would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that first popular post that was going around, it had like North Carolina, Clemson, Miami, kind of like sectioning it like off by regions, like a South region, like everything like that. I think it helps Tennessee because if you have the NCAA out and you have your own rule of formats, then Tennessee can be the big dog they want. Like, because right now, you know, they're recruiting the NCAA investigation, having someone looking over your shoulder. If Tennessee can do whatever they want with their own alignment of rules, I feel like that helps. But it's also not going to help because going in to those states and areas and, like, you know, usually you're recruiting them to play SEC ball, and then these teams are now on national stages playing in the same conference as you, so it's not really an advantage. It might make kids want to stay home more. I do think it would be crazy, though, to see like a Tennessee versus Miami game or a Tennessee versus Clemson game, games that haven't happened for some decades. I think would kind of mix it up. Obviously, it's some of the big names, big grossing names in college football, some of the biggest spenders too. So going at teams with top classes, I think that's kind of everything we kind of wanted. I just think it would kind of do away with the whole, like, you know, FCS games, like those 4 games a year that you get that are like other teams out of conference games. Like, it's going to kind of do away with that. Our conference is going to have to make a pact for their conference teams to play another conference now because it's their own rules. It's not under the NCAA. There's just like a lot of things you can kind of look at it. But I think overall, as long as they do it right, and it's kind of hard, you know, having the NCAA saying to, you know, do it right. But as long as they can get some kind of good format, I think it can be a really good thing. It might help the game, but it could also kill it.
I don't know. A part of me would like if they started doing, like, you know how in basketball they have like the SEC versus the Big 12 challenges. I wouldn't mind if we had like a SEC versus Big 10 challenge, like to start off the year. Like, we go 1 year play Michigan on the road, or we have Ohio State at home, or like something like that. I mean, I think having those games, like, yeah, I mean, it would suck for those FCS Division II schools because they heavily rely on that one game a year where they get their teeth in like 65-0 because we pay for their season. But at the same time, if you want people to show up to the games and have like meaningful games, you got to form those type of challenges. And I think it would be great for the sport. And as far as teams go, I don't want Miami in there. Like, I don't like, I don't find them appealing at all. I feel like they would disrespect the conference in a lot of ways. So I want someone that's more respectable that we could actually beat, like Florida State. Florida State's terrible, but they have great tradition. Or, you know, Clemson, Tennessee could be a good rivalry. But the one team I think we should really heavily lean on advocating is Georgia Tech. Okay. And the reason is because Georgia Tech sucks in every sport, so it's a guaranteed win. They'd be like another Vanderbilt. And also, they're one of the original members of the Southeastern Conference. Like, a lot of people forget that, but they were in the SEC back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, the same time that Tennessee and Georgia and all these other teams were. So they have that history and that background behind them. So they have the history to it. They're a guaranteed win. There's no reason for them not to be in the conference.
So I kind of think that I think that we should add Virginia Tech, okay? And I say Virginia Tech because I think that just based on like outside appearance, they look like an SEC school. Also due to proximity, they not that far away. But also, like Drew's saying about Georgia Tech, I think that they're beatable in every sport. But I feel like they compete a little bit more than Georgia Tech, so that win would mean a little bit more than just beating Georgia Tech because it's just Georgia Tech. I agree with the FSU addition. I think they're also close in proximity. I'm big on the conference just making sense geographically, and with Florida State in the Panhandle, they're not that far away. So I would agree with that. Clemson, I don't know. Duke, whatever. Carolina can come over. But aside from those, like that's Virginia Tech's the one that jumps out at me the most because I just think that they can get just as rowdy as we do if they're good. So playing them would be a lot of fun, and just competing against them, not only in the game, but also just as like fans, because they got some wild ass fans too. I think that would be fun, but just get rid of Missouri. I don't think they need to be hanging out with us no more.
I'm glad that you added the geography point to it because I read a ridiculous thing today where it's actually the same distance from Newark, New Jersey, which I believe is where Rutgers is at. The same difference from Newark to Iceland than it is from Newark to LA. So we need there has to be some logical sense in these teams that we add because you also got to remember, like, outside of football, like, it's expensive to try, like, to have your baseball, your basketball, your cross country teams, even your tennis teams traveling across country all over the place. Like, that's the one thing I think a lot of people don't realize with the Big Ten is adding these two teams, USC and UCLA. This is going to be a logistical nightmare for these universities on trying to get these like schools and trying to do these competitions. So I agree. The geography point is very, very important.
Let me jump in right quick to that point because like now they just eliminated all all of their bus traveling games to 1 per season in football, and then in basketball you get 2. The rest you've got to fly everywhere else. Same thing for baseball. I mean, you're going to have to you drive to 1 series and then you fly to the rest of them. Like, that logistically just does not make sense. Like, I mean, yeah, the money's there and I guess it'll pay for it, but like, is it really that worth it? Like, you might start suffering competition wise at that point. That's just me, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, good points all. And we have to take geography into account at some point, because I don't think Tennessee wants to be in a position to where you get Oregon and Washington once the Pac-12 does fold into the SEC, and then you're having to make a trip up to Oregon, or make a trip out to Seattle, which we're doing anyway in 2031, I think is when we're going up there.
Mm-hmm.
But, Al made a really good point. It's like, what if we all just go independent, and we already mentioned playoff expansion. At that point, you have to do it. And right now, like you said, Drew, you got Georgia Tech, who used to be a part of the SEC. I would try to go snag them. Maybe you'll get a Florida State, because you can't get a couple of the original members. I mean, you can't go get Sewanee and Tulane. I mean, that's not going to happen. Those guys couldn't compete. But, at one point, we were all in a 23-team super conference before we joined the SEC, or before the SEC was formed. But, I mean, at the same time, you had schools like VMI, Washington and Lee, Sewanee, and a bunch of schools that I don't even know if some of them have a football team anymore. That's what we were dealing with at the time. And I think also, if you do get to the point where you do have 20 teams in a conference, we're already arguing about, should we go to a 4-team pod right now with 16 teams, or should we do the 3 and 6 or 1 and 7 are the models that we've been handed pretty much at this point. It's like, we're already arguing about that. And if you add more teams, that you make it a 20-team conference, you're just opening up the door for more and more just logistical nightmares at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think geographically, you really need to be smart about it. Obviously, even if you look back with the past 2 seasons with COVID and flights canceled and all of the shit that these teams have already had to deal with, that alone would be a nightmare, having to go across the country all the time. But in terms of like teams that I would like to be added to the SEC, Clemson is number 1, because their schedule strength is such shit, and I'm sick of it. So I think they should definitely be in it. And then in terms of other teams, just thinking about other sports, I also agree with Virginia Tech, or even Virginia and Duke, not really because of football, but because of basketball. And I think it could just elevate the matchups that way for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, I think North Carolina too. They should definitely kind of be in there. South Carolina, North Carolina. That would, every year already a game. Tennessee, North Carolina. A lot of people from North Carolina, Tennessee connections. That'd be good in itself. But all in all, like we said, it's a big old mess. Coming down to the wire of the whole contract with already going with the college playoff expansion. Talks of going to 12 or maybe 24. Like, now you're having everyone make their own kind of move. So if you want to keep it together, you're going to have to work with these conferences that are building their own kind of thing and, align with that to keep it still a thing. No matter what, I just think they have to do it right for the sake of the game. You got to realize you're doing this for college athletes, kids. Just because you started, putting the value of what they can earn doesn't mean you can just go out there and screw with them. They obviously have to have something to play for. It can't just be like the NFL, where it makes the game of college football not matter anymore. And I think as long as they can do that, keep the game where it's supposed to be, it would be good to play these teams, gives a new feel, a new face to the game, but they just got to do it right. And it's hard to say do it right, but that's all they have to do.
I don't know. I just feel like Clemson would just make much more sense as a team to add as opposed to North Carolina. Not only you have that Clemson-South Carolina connection where that's an in-state rivalry, like Clemson also has a rivalry with Georgia. They've had history playing Auburn as well, and Tennessee's even had some history with them as well, on top of that. So I just don't want to add Virginia. Like Virginia and like Virginia Tech and like Duke, all those like schools for me are like they're irrelevant. Like they're one sport schools. Like, we need schools that are good at everything or terrible at everything. So that's why I feel like Georgia Tech would be a great addition.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well call us like the Southeastern Atlantic Conference, like the SAC instead of the SEC, because the teams that you're going to try to go out there and poach are going to be guys in the ACC. And at that point, it wouldn't be maybe too crazy as far as this is going to see conferences like that merge. I know it sounds really crazy and stupid, but if you want your teams and you want to dip into the pool of like the biggest media grab for college football, merging with the SEC and the ACC, that would pretty much be like the dagger for relevance in college football, in my opinion. So it's just crazy to think about that, like where it could go and what could happen, because we've seen it, like things we never thought would happen before in the past 6 months. That's just coming to fruition. So,
I mean, if we're going to be like technical though, like we stopped being the SEC a long time ago when we added Arkansas as a team, because they're not even in the Southeast. They're west of the Mississippi, so Southeast. So, I mean, geography doesn't matter. Just don't add a California school. Don't add.
Fuck no.
Don't add Nova Scotia. Like, just make it reasonable.
Nova Scotia.
Hey, I was going to say something about that, Brendo, though. Like, I think it makes most sense. Like, if we were to merge with a conference, why would we not pick the ACC? Because, like y'all have been saying, they do have original members from the SEC, or at least when we were a huge conference, had people that were part of it at a time. But I feel like the thing that gets in the way is the thing that was reported a while back was like when the SEC and the Big Ten were looking to expand, and they were like, yeah, let's go do our own thing. And then it was like the Big 12, the Pac-12, and who's the other? What's the other Big Five or Power Five? What's the other Power Five conference? I forget.
ACC.
Yeah. Oh, damn. I just said that, didn't I? Yeah, those three, they were like making an alliance, right? So I thought that's the only thing that stays in my mind. So the ACC maybe just out of spite that like we're kind of doing this to them, quote unquote, they would not try to merge with us. But at some point, everybody's got a price. And if they want to get paid, if those schools want to get paid, they're going to leave. So either the ACC is going to have to make some more money, or they're probably going to come right over.
Don't you find it hilarious that literally like all three of those conferences, like the Big 12, the Big 10, or the ACC, Pac-12, and Big 10 all formed the alliance like a year ago, only for the Big 10 just to go ahead and just poach all their teams? Like, it's just fucking great.
Yeah. Let's talk about the real problem here. NCAA, EA Sports Football decides like they're coming back, and now college football just wants to go in a whole swindle. Like, how are you going to make a video game now? And like you have all this conference realignment going on. Like, you're going to probably put the draft in and have like everything change in like 6 months.
That was the great thing about that game, is just like customizing the conferences and adding like ridiculous teams. And like,
and now it's going to be done for you.
A dream 10 years ago, and now it's actually happening. So great.
Hey, I was going to say, now you got to go in the settings and like turn on conferences. You're going to have to like create conferences for all the teams now if you want to. They'd be like, wow, I'm customizing the hell out of this shit, ain't I?
Putting it back, it's like the old way. Take Vanderbilt out.
It's funny you bring that up, because I was actually this past weekend, that's all I did was, if I wasn't, fixing a burger, fixing a hot dog, eating some jambalaya, I was playing NCAA 14.
Yeah.
And point where I made all the SEC schools independent, but you had to keep 4 teams in the conference. So I was putting like MTSU and just like 4 just crap teams in the SEC, making all the teams independent. And then I figured out it only lets you add like 30 independent teams, and then you have to start moving some of the original independent teams into conferences. So the SEC and the Pac-12 were independent, and then eventually it just got to the point where I was like, okay, this is boring. Just maxed out all my players' ratings, go in and edit all my starters. 144-0, Jake Miller, best coach in Tennessee history.
Better than Coach Doug's himself.
Absolutely.
But that's what kind of bring up a great point, because like, you have it for so long, it's going to be fun and refreshing, but like, what if it just does get old, and you kind of like, think about the old way, and people complain about how college football isn't the same, and seeing like the day and age of college football with NIL and kids making money. I just see like a lot of things, happening, like kids not playing their full contracts out, like being crazy of not what they signed up for, not thinking like what it would be, not the experience they wanted, just all around being a mess. But like we said, you just have to have it like pre-planned before you make an official game-changing move. But to have that aspect where it's kind of just go out there, be crazy, have fun, living kind of like it was college football EA, like it's going to be fun. But
on the flip side of that, Brenda, though, it could have athletes actually staying out at the college for 3-4 years and actually riding out their NIL deals because they have the opportunity to make money, instead of just being like, oh, I have to declare for the draft. It could be a lot more fun that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could talk about it like going up until like they finally make the official move. Like, there's probably millions of scenarios, but I'm glad that I'm not one of those guys making the choices. So, respectfully.
And also, too, they're going to have to make some sort of lock and like lock it in for quite some time. Otherwise, it's just going to keep changing. Like, okay, you guys get a 3-year contract, and then we'll re-up and see if we want to add more teams. Like, I feel like it just needs to all just be really well planned out and done, and not really change it anymore, or it just gets ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other thoughts on this?
No, it's just a big old mess, and whatever happens, happens. But we can't. College football's dead.
I love it. It's anarchy. It's just pure madness. So I'm here for it.
Low, like you said, tear the NCAA apart, burn it to the ground, let the kids have the freedom, do whatever. I don't care. Dissolve the NCAA.
I mean, are we really miss like those meaningless like Tennessee versus ETSU games like 10 years down the road? Like, I don't know. Like, I hate it when we play like the Wisconsin School for the Deaf or, Tennessee School of the Blind, like, for
I don't
home.
know.
Like,
But unless it's Vanderbilt playing ETSU and they get boat roast and.
But man, even then, like, I hate when we play Vanderbilt because we always beat their ass traditionally, of course. I mean, last few years otherwise, but usually we beat them by 35. So like, I just feel like this is going to add more competitive games and like exciting finishes and college football classics. So I hate it for the other schools, hate it for, the small in-state Tennessee Techs and, all those, but I mean, they can go to hell. I don't really care about them.
I mean, you heard it here first.
You can play one of those games in the spring. If you really want to, you could schedule like an ETSU or a UT Chattanooga. Play that as your spring game, a game that's actually going to mean something instead of one of these bullshit games that we've seen for years and years and years where nobody understands the scoring mechanism. It's all just a big dog and pony show that doesn't mean anything. Bring in a team where you actually have to have some sort of competition because they're going to give you their best game. And you're actually going to show up, going to look stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you think like the jamborees in high school football, like if you've ever played high school, playing the jamboree before your like actual season, you want to play it against another team. I know you're not scared of injury or giving too much out to the public, but keep it limited. There's no reason why you shouldn't go out against a team. Like, we're not Vanderbilt. We can go out there and compete with these OVC teams. So I think it's a great idea to kind of give those other schools still some exposure while we kind of push them out of the big picture. I think it's only fair because all in all, Tennessee's still funding those schools. So,
and you could even like a mini schedule where you add like 2 or 3 of those teams in April. Because hell, I'll pay dollars to go see them play Tennessee Tech in April. And it'll be good exposure for them because we can actually fund them, their seasons and all that good stuff. So I think that's a great proposal, Jake Miller. I love that. So easy dubs, get some momentum going, when we beat the hell out of Georgia Tech or someone near relevant. So to start off the year, yeah, I like that.
I was actually about to say that, Drew. Like, you could make like a 2 or 3 week thing out of it and schedule a couple people. Maybe, I don't know if you would pay them the same amount as we do for now, but like still fund them, like you said, like pay them something because obviously they come in to get their hind end beat, whatever. But yeah, like make like a little mini season out of it, so that way we're also not beating up on ourselves. The players have something to look forward to because they've been in spring ball, so now like that ends their spring ball. You might as well like give them somebody else to look forward to beat up on instead of themselves again. But Jake, you bring up the scoring. So I take it you weren't a fan of Butch Jones' scoring system.
I would rather shove bamboo underneath my toenails than to sit there and watch another spring game. That was
a score of 79-48, and we don't know how we got there.
You would get like 5 points for throwing like a 3-yard slant. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, like if you got an offsides, you lost like 2 points. It was like, but why is the score moving? Nothing happened.
But then a series where like they were throwing like fucking 30-yard balls into trash cans. Like, none of it made any. It was pure madness. It's not the madness I like, but it was pure madness.
Oh, and the random circle of life drills.
Oh yeah, just pause the whole scrimmage. Let's go to the middle of the field and do circle of life. Like, blows my mind.
And then just right back to the game. Right back to it.
I will say that was the one thing I did like about Pruitt, though. When he came in, he's like, we're going to have a traditional spring football game. So go back on 11-on-11 as opposed to these like circle of life drills, throwing balls only 15 yards to nobody, and, like Butch Jones judging on the person's critique on how they threw the football. Like, it was ridiculous. God, he sucked.
It is really bad. I love that proposal of just a mini, like, 2 to 4 week season just right at the end. I think that'd be awesome for the fans. And, like, obviously these other teams would at least get a little bit of help, and we could also just get a little bit of football in between all the other sports.
Here's
Well,
the thing:
you opportunity like an MTSU or somebody that is still at the D1 level during the regular season, instead of having to waste the game on a team that's in the FCS instead of a lower tier FBS school that might also need the money as well.
I mean, here's the thing: it's another opportunity for Tennessee to get fans in Neyland and make money. You sell tickets, you sell concessions, you sell merch. That's just more money that's coming to you as a entity. Which then again, you take that money, you flip that into NIL, you get better players. I mean, it helps everybody. And then we pay the lower schools, but whatever poverty programs. But like it helps us. Like anytime you get the fans excited, you get the fans in Neyland. Like we're always itching for some reason to just be in that stadium. We are begging to be in the stadium. Y'all seen it on Twitter. The Vols sign, like everybody's been eating that up for like the last like 2-3 days. We were watching a live feed of them hang signs on that stadium. Okay. That's how much we love that place, and that's how much we want to be in there. So, like, just get us in there. Like, we will show up. Make it like a $5 ticket. Make it a $10 ticket. We're gonna show up. So
I'll pay $10 for the ticket, and I'll pay $15 for that Dos Equis in the beer stand.
Absolutely, and I'll be happy about it as long as I'm sitting in a seat in Neyland Stadium. I promise I will be.
Yeah, there's no shot with those renovations. Like those ticket prices ain't coming down anytime soon. Let's be real.
Hey,
but I mean, to kind of talk about the Vols letter side, I guess like for people like my age and younger, like they really don't understand the meaning of those letters and what happened in 1998. Like winning the championship, like the crazy seasons you had at home, going undefeated at home. Like I know it's kind of a big deal for the Vol for Lifers on Facebook and Twitter. How do y'all kind of feel? Y'all think it's gonna obviously it won't change how we play, but do you think it's a nice touch to see Danny White, a year and a half in, listening to the fans more than any AD kind of has prior to him?
I think this has lifted the curse of Tennessee football. I really did. You all right there?
Yeah, Alex.
Hey, you said cursing
like multiple times,
bro. You said cursing and started flickering. Be quiet.
I think it's lifted the curse, man. Do you want to know what our record has been since they've gotten rid of the Vols letters, even including the Jumbotron back in 2008? 80 and 81. 80 and 81 since we've gotten rid of those letters. And we had a span back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where from 1997 up until 2000, we didn't lose a single game at home, which is like insane to think. For 3 years, 3 straight seasons, we didn't lose a single game at home. And then we even in the mid-2000s had a couple seasons. I think the last one was 2007, where we went undefeated at home. We haven't had anything remotely close to that since then. I think we've had a couple seasons where we've only lost 2 games at home. And I think there's 1 year under Butch where we lost 1, which was to Alabama in 2016. But outside of that, I mean, it just we've lost it. And I don't like to go into conspiracy theories and all this stuff or like have my Alex Jones side come out. But I truly believe it's because of those 4 letters have disappeared. I mean, but they're back. We're back. And there's nothing anyone can do about it.
I do think they're really freaking sweet. I mean, they look so good. But honestly, I'm just more obsessed with the new Jumbotron and the beer garden, to be quite honest. That's going to be so legit. But at least we have the letters back. I don't know. If we're talking curses, though, I think the curse is still that Louisiana voodoo shit rumor that everyone said. That's the curse, in my opinion, not the letters. But regardless, I do think that everything's turned around. And Danny White just deserves a shout out for real, for really listening to everyone. And I mean, he listens to all of the coaches too, but the fans and just what they want. And he doesn't care to make things fun. I mean, these block parties and shit, like that's just awesome stuff that generates money and good energy for teams. So I just think he's doing a phenomenal job.
He's the best athletic director we've had since Mike Hamilton, easily. He's just like, he's the same level as Mike Hamilton.
I hate Drew.
But
I saw a crazy tweet. It was like about the fact that after Butch got canned, it took like 6 months to get him off our Jumbotron, and here Danny White here is getting things done with Neyland. I think it's gonna there was worries it wouldn't be done before the first game opening up against Ball State. It sounds like they've been working overtime to kind of get it done, and then to go on top of that and get the letters planned to get pre-back up in there, and like not only one side but both sides of letters done in 2 days. Waking up to seeing both sides done. I just think it's crazy to see how he's listening. If you can get the rest of it renovated, like being a 5-year project to kind of project it to be, if you get all that up to date and give it like a new home and, fix the outside, not only is it going to help with recruiting, but just, in general, getting people back into that stadium. Like we talked about with the conference, realignment, having better games. Also, you make that place a better place inside and out. People are going to show up back to Neyland. It's just, we have to put a good product on the field. So,
Lo, I think you brought up a really good point. It took a protest outside of Neyland for John Curry to listen to us, and then he lost his job. We send out a couple tweets on Twitter, and Wyatt's getting everything done. Like he's like you were saying, he's setting up those block parties. That started as like not a conspiracy, but it was just like somebody tweeted it out, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." And then he was like, "Hey, let's do it." And so then he did it. And then people were like, "Hey, we kind of want those VOLS back on the top." And he was like, "All right, I can do that too." And so like it just feels good to be heard for once, and like to actually felt like us as the consumers of whatever product that y'all are putting out there, the thing that we're putting money towards, that like we have some kind of voice in that. Now, granted, we don't know everything. Obviously, it's his job to make the final decision, and I trust him to make the correct ones. But just the fact that we're being heard and just considered for once feels pretty dang good. I can't lie.
No, it feels awesome. And Drew, you mentioned, the letters coming down in 2008. It's not even a fun fact. This is a sad fact. We've not had a 10-win season since those letters came down and when they put the new video board up. And, to everybody's point about how Danny White's actually looking or listening to the fans, you look on Twitter on July the 4th, and he's interacting with fans on a day where he could easily just be interacting with his family, put the phone down, whatnot, and it shows that he cares. It's not all about him. Same with Josh Heupel. You look back at the previous coaches, it wasn't necessarily about the players. It was all about him. And right now, it just feels good to be able to look at an athletic director, look at a football coach and be like, okay, this guy gets it. And he's not acting like some of our previous administrators and previous coaches, walking out like he's in Congress, telling a blatant lie, saying, oh, we're in much better shape than we were, this time last year. It's like, no, we're not. We're 0-2 with 2 shit losses to Georgia State and BYU. No, we're not in a better place. Yeah. It's like, what do you think we are? Do you think we're that stupid? But no, it feels good to have an athletic director, a football coach, a basketball coach, and a baseball coach that all get it. It's such a refreshing feeling compared to what we were in 2017 in November.
Yeah. I mean, Jake, you pretty much hit it on the head right there. You saw earlier Hendon Hooker tweeting out that tweet saying this is like the place to be. You saw the guys, so they wrote for Tony V in baseball and Vescovi and other guys like that after an emotional year in basketball, like having, coaches in general of all sports and, an AD, everything that Tennessee did, winning like 5 conference championships this year, like the most they've done in a while, having the highest win percentage in all sports while still struggling to get back, right in football, but it's still going in the right direction. In that little time, come in and put the full focus on not just, the 3 major athletics, but pretty much everything. Just, interacting with everyone. Like he's going to make it feel like home. And I feel like that's what Tennessee needs, to feel like home again, show these kids what it could be, not only just because of the benefits of what we're becoming, but what we've always been. And we're finally bringing that back. It's just great to see a guy kind of come in and take it his own.
No doubt about that. Everyone pretty much killed it on these answers. Do y'all want to go to the listener questions from Twitter?
Let's do it.
Everyone ready for that? All right. First one is from @ClasslessVol, who wants to know who we think the freshman that steps up most this season, I'm assuming for football, obviously, is going to be.
I read this question and I automatically, went offensive and defensive. I know it's probably just one, but I know obviously the hot choice on offense is going to be Justin Williams-Thomas in a kind of thin backfield at the running back position right now. Crazy size. All the pictures coming out of him being early in camp and understanding the game and kind of getting up to speed. I just kind of think a crazy season is in store for him. My defensive pick is probably going to be Caleb Perry, the second half enrollee in May, recently coming in, played linebacker in high school, played quarterback too. The kid's from Kentucky, an absolute freak athlete, was a 3-star under the lights. Very underrated. His stat line, and he's like just a freak athlete. I think this kid comes into our linebacker room, another position on the defensive side that's very thin, comes in there, gets immediate help on that side of the ball. And if we can get those guys, early enrollees, period, just rolling under hype in his first real kind of class that really wasn't a complete class for him, he kind of got a late start there. It would be great to see, just that early progress of kind of being able to recruit and evaluate that early.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned Justin William Thomas because he was the first guy that like I instantly thought of that would would have an impact as a freshman. But as you say, I mean, with Jabari Small and Jalen Wright over there, it's just gonna be hard for him to get reps every game.
Mhm.
But one guy that I got is defensive end Tyree West, who was one of the top guys in the 2022 class. He was a 4-star recruit out of Georgia. We he'll be behind either Tyler Barron or Byron Young. But the thing is that he's going to have a lot of opportunities because we don't really necessarily have that much depth at the edge rusher spot. And he's someone, dude, that is like so quick off his feet and able to get through the gaps and put pressure on the quarterback. I read like a crazy thing where he has a 4.5 shuttle time for his size at 6'3", 280 is like pretty ridiculous. It's really, really good. And he loves to play contact. He's one of those type of guys that loves to be out there in the field 30, 40 plays a game. So he's just someone that has a motor where he just keeps on running. He doesn't really necessarily stop. And I'll have a hot take right here. I'll say by the end of the season, he's going to be one of our starting rushers. Like, I think he's going to take over either Byron Young or Tyler Barron's spot by the end of the season. That's how hyped up I am about this kid.
Sheesh.
I also picked Tyree West for mine, so I don't know if Jake has anyone else to to talk about.
I was going to go with that as well. Brando, I like the Justin Williams Thomas one, especially him wearing number 26, makes him look like a real tailback. But while we're on the topic of it, can we bring up a transfer?
Oh, yeah.
Andre Turrentine.
That's
secondary.
Huge.
And like you said, I think, Drew, you mentioned how you think Tyree West is going to be a starter by the end of the year. I think that he's going to take over the spot for probably Warren Burrell, out at the cornerback position by season's end. Because at that point, you got him, you got Brandon Turner, Jalen McCullough, all those guys back there. I mean,
I think Turrentine, he logged. Yeah, he logged like 120 snaps in Ohio State spring game. He's like very experienced. Just a hard room to kind of find work in. Coming back to his home state, definitely after what we saw in the Music City Bowl, definitely need the help kind of there respectfully. But also a guy there. I think Jordan Thomas, that enrollee, he'd be good there. And then I know the name we forgot that looked like an absolute freak was Jordan Phillips. That kid on the line that Rodney Garner got in earlier, that Florida kid, he is a freak athlete, like 260 solid muscle. Already as a freshman, was early enrollee, got a few bowl practices under him. So I think there's a lot of guys you can kind of look at, give them props. They got a late start in the class, but there's a ton of guys.
What about any receivers? Are y'all looking at any receivers to step up this year? Because I kind of like we have Tillman, we lost Velus Jones, and that's kind of the spot we're in because we are still waiting on Hyatt to step up, which again, I think he might be one of those breakout players that we have on the receiver or on the receiving core. But I just maybe purely out of name, I'm looking at Squirrel White, a little 5'10", 160 speedster, but that's also maybe a little bit unrealistic, maybe because he just needs to put on some weight and get ready for the SEC. But I'm also kind of looking at Cameron Miller, a 6'1", 206-pound receiver. Maybe just spread the field on the other side because people are going to be doubling Tillman. People have seen that Hooker to Tillman connection a lot, and they're expecting him to keep going back to him. I think that's going to end up being Hooker's safety blanket when a play breaks down. But I just want to see one receiver step up for us. I'm going to pick Cameron Miller. Big body, put him on the outside. Put him on the inside. I don't care. Just throw him the ball. You know how we get our offense moving, so aerate it.
It'd probably be a bad time to tell Alex that they moved Cameron Miller to a defensive back in the spring practice, so he's not even a wide receiver anymore. But I think you were mentioning right, kind of right with the Squirrel White, Caleb Webb, or Chaz Nimrod. I think all those guys, because we didn't land a guy like Jalen Robinson and, losing out on Isaiah Nayor. Tennessee, they've kept it no secret. They kind of want to go more 4 wide this year, add an extra slot. I definitely see a guy like Squirrel if he can use his speed and gain some weight. Obviously, Caleb Webb is very talented in Georgia football. Chaz Nimrod, a bunch of those guys, I feel like they all have size advantages already as early enrollees. Putting on some great weight too. So any freshman they can get in there would be really, really great. But to kind of think of like a slot guy, you mentioned Jalen Hyatt. I would definitely say a guy like Jimmy Callaway, who had his flashes and then kind of disappeared. If you can get him for a multiple game role and kind of turn him into like the next Javonte Payton, like you don't have to be a big play guy every single drive, but if you can get us a touchdown or two every game, having that in this offense with also Brew and Cedric, you can just open the field. And I think that's important of being able to go 4 wide and open the field this year. So.
For sure. Next question is kind of more about defense and depth. So at Mark Redwine 4 asked us about defense. How are we on depth and development from last year? Because that's my huge concern for this season.
Before Drew goes like all BVD on us, I'm going to say that like the depth is, obviously it's no secret. It's horrendous for SEC level play. Like we definitely have some, spots that, we might have a good first and second team at positions, but when it gets kind of deeper and thin, like you don't have many guys you can go and say you're comfortable with putting him on the field. But when you speak of in a development part, I look at all the coaches. You got BJM, Brian G. Marie, Rodney Garner, one of the best defensive line coaches, Willie Martinez, who's put multiple guys in the league, putting Alante and what's his name? 26. I'm blanking right now.
Theo Jackson?
Yeah, Theo Jackson, putting those 2 guys in the league this year in the draft. I think, obviously depth is a struggle, but development-wise, I think these guys can get some key drives out of these guys. And if you can get guys that can go on the field and play and you have some confidence in them, get some confidence on the field, play at the SEC level, that's going to be super, super key because obviously next year and the year after that, and you're seeing it already in recruiting classes on the defensive line, the edge rushing position that Tennessee's going after, linebacker and corners, they know they have a problem on the defense. And it's going to take depth and years of classes, but develop the guys and you're going to get good time.
I don't think it's going to be actually as terrible as we think it will be. Just in the sense is that from the defensive line perspective, I mean, yeah, we lost Matthew Butler, but we got Tyler Barron coming back, Byron Young, who I think both those guys will take huge strides, Tyree West, as I mentioned. But, I expect Elijah Simmons over there at nose tackle will be able to take a big step. And we also got DeJoun Terry, the transfer from Kansas, who's, I think he's like 6'9", 300 pounds. He's like an absolute unit. I mean, that defensive line last year broke the program record for most tackle for losses in a season, which is, when you think about some of the guys that we've produced in the defensive line over the last 20, 30 years, it's pretty remarkable. And I think it speaks volumes for Rodney Gardner. And I think linebacker, I think like Jeremy Banks is going to be, it's like I said a couple weeks ago, I think Jeremy Banks is going to be all SEC this season. I think if he can cut down the mental mistakes of those 1, 2, 15-yard, face mask, unsportsmanlike penalties, I think he could be all SEC, first team all SEC, even potentially all American. I mean, he had over 130 tackles last year alone. And then I think a lot of people forget that Aaron Beasley had over 85 tackles last year. I mean, for a guy that really just was in the worst place possible a lot of moments last year, he actually had a pretty productive season. I think the one group, and I've started thinking more of it, that I think is going to have more development than out of all the other courts on defense is the secondary. Because you're adding Andre Turretin, who has that experience from Ohio State. As you mentioned, had 120 snaps in the spring game. Quincy Riley, who's already played Division I football at MTSU. Desmond Williams, who's a huge, JUCO prospect that we've had over there as well. And Christian Charles, who went from strong safety to defensive back this spring and has made huge strides. And even Heupel's mentioned that he's the type of guy that can be a leader in the locker room. I think you're going to see that group in the defense improve more than anyone else. And so I still don't think it's going to be a top 30 defense by any stretch of the imagination, but it'll certainly be better than 98th last year.
Yeah, Drew, you kind of went exactly how I plan to attack that question, saying that I think the D-line's fine. I think linebackers are going to be fine. But with the way that we put up points in a hurry, people have to catch up quick. And the way to catch up quick is to throw the deep ball or attack the secondary. So I think when people get down 14-zip real quick in the first quarter, they're going to start airing it out more because they still got to get down the field. And we had one side locked up for a good portion of the season with Alante Taylor, and then the other side got picked on with Warren Burrell. So I'm more interested just to see how it plays out. I'm trying not to set expectations. I would like to see the D-line play the way they did last year with obviously Gardner at the helm, because I think they were a very pleasant surprise last season. And seeing them play the way that they play, like people only average like 3.5 yards rush on us. That's pretty solid, honestly. And they average like maybe 149 rush yards a game. But then oppositely, they had 273 yards passing against us, 422 total. And we were 90th in points against at 29. But again, when you're a team that puts up points in a hurry, those other teams have to play out of style, which is throw the ball, try to score points too. So I'm more or less trying not to put expectations on it, and I just kind of want to see how it unfolds. But I kind of see it being similar to last season. I just hope, like Drew was saying, that the secondary improves. We also had somebody saying, let's see, his name is Klebo2584, was saying Jordan Thomas is another one to watch on defense, the freshman cornerback coming in. So, yeah, I hope they develop. I hope they get better because people are going to be throwing at them all day.
Yeah, another name that we've not mentioned is James Pierce, another guy we've got coming in.
Oh, yeah.
So he's going to be a pretty good edge rusher. I mean, the thing is, like you said, Brando, the depth, it's still not right where we want it to be, but it's at least some sort of depth. It's not like Florida going into where they have absolutely no depth. Like, that's the thing about us. Like, we have some depth. It might not be the best depth that we could get, but Florida has nothing. And, I mean, that's one step in the right direction over our competition right there. I mean, that's somebody you got to play every year. And you at least want to be ahead of the curve when it comes to somebody like that, especially somebody that has beat your ass, 17 of the last 20 years.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I'm not worried from like a physicality standpoint about development because we have some of the best locker rooms and assets at our university than anyone else in the country does. And I think that our coaches will develop them just fine on that standpoint. But my biggest concern is the mental mistakes and errors that were just so crucial last year in multiple parts of the game. And if, like you said, Banks, like he played like an animal, but he was always guaranteed at least 30 yards and penalties a game, like just silly like errors that if they could fix could completely make a turnaround on the defensive side of the ball. So I guess for me, I'm not concerned physicality wise. Like I think they'll be in better shape. I think they'll be more prepared, especially the guys who finally understand how fast this offense is and they're playing against them multiple times and now they're going into their second season. But in reality, I just want to see them better conditioned mentally and just making better decisions overall and off the fly. And I think they'll be more improved on the defensive side of the ball than they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Because I think about it, like how many times last year, not only defensively, but offensively, did we see like guys like Cade Mays in the Ole Miss game where someone kind of pissed him off and he went at him and cost us 15 yards back in the offense. We talked about it like every single week on the show about how year 1 to year 2 under Heupel, like statistically, it always gets better. But penalties, if we can fix those and the countless mistakes that we did have with 15 yards or more, that would be huge because it would not only keep the offensive rolling, but defense locked in. And getting off the field in third down was hard enough last year. It was horrendous. So fix those mental mistakes, and you can obviously count on a better outcome.
And honestly, some of that could be attributed to the lack of depth. When you play tired, you are more apt to make mistakes. So if you get rotation players that can come in and at least give you a break every now and then you're going to play sharper, you're going to play smarter. So maybe as we even develop that depth, that will take care of itself. So maybe that's a problem that just so happened to be circumstance because we didn't have enough players to get on the field. But yeah, maybe that's not even like a problem necessarily. Granted, I still think it is, but part of it can be taken away by just adding SEC depth like we've been talking about.
No doubt. Lex question, I think we've got 2 more. At Stone Cold Balls, he asked us, is Joey Chestnut the greatest competitor to walk the earth, and why is the answer yes?
Oh, it's 100% yes. And not only because of the fact that he showed up on crutches, but this man almost took a guy's neck that got onto the stage. Like, let's talk about not only was he, out there being a champion, holding his crown in his reign, but this man got the job done. And I would definitely pay to see Joey Chestnut in the ring or the octagon now. I just have to see it.
Oh, he's the greatest American athlete of our generation. It's not even close. I mean, 16-time, or sorry, I think, it's 16-time now. 15. I was right.
15.
Nathan Hot Dog eating champion. And he did it with a broken freaking leg. I mean, like full on, like Michael Jordan flu game, or like when Kurt Angle broke his neck to get that gold medal in '96 in the Olympics. It's that same level. And honestly, if it wasn't for that guy talking about the Smithfield Death Star and trying to interrupt him in the middle of his hot dog eating, he might have broke the over. He might have gotten it. That killed his pace. And so the fact that, all year, he was recovering from an Achilles injury. He didn't, then he had complications with that. He didn't get the practice that he needed, that he always gets to prepare for this one big day of the year. He still ate 63 hot dogs and still won by 20. So when you think about the greatest for 30, 40 years now, when we talk about our kids and their grandkids and their grandkids and their grandkids, they're going to think of 3 Americans that are the greatest athletes to ever live. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Joey Jaws Chestnut.
I hate Drew. I love him, but I hate him.
Hey, that was such a mic drop. I gotta laugh for a second.
I was gonna compare him to John Cena's title reign, but this man Drew just gave us a WWE promo.
Hey, just first off, I want to clear the air, Drew. Let's call it the Michael Jordan hangover game. That boy did not have the flu. He was hungover. That's all I'm gonna say. Mute your mic. I don't want to hear an argument on that one because he was hungover. Second, people say, as we're talking about Michael Jordan, they said that he's one of the greatest winners of all time, 6 rings. Phil Jackson, 11 rings. Bill Russell, 11 rings. They don't have 15. Joey Chestnut got 15. If he had 3 hands, he would cover up every finger with rings. That's all I got to say. Also, wait, I do have more to say. He had, like you were saying, Drew, he had an off game. The man had an off game, and he still whooped everybody's hind end. Granted, physically, he also whooped that dude's hind end that came up on him. He tackled him, finished the hot dog, and then continued to beat everybody's hind end that was up there. They honestly deserve to be on their own stage, and Chestnut should have his own platform that he eats hot dogs from. So we just need to change that. But as far as all sports go, this man is probably the best winner of all time.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the guy's one shy of Ric Flair at this point. Like you said, Drew, a broken freaking leg, broke a guy's freaking neck, and then still wins by 20. I mean, if that were Kobayashi, that would not have happened. Kobayashi would have bailed out and tried to say, I need more time. Now, Joey Chestnut, he's like, I'm still going to win by 20, and just keeps hammering down the hot dogs.
I didn't even think about that.
If there were any other hot dog, it'd be the nastiest contest in the world. I can only do Nathan's.
Pretty sure he was mid-bite too. I'm pretty sure he was
he grabbed his neck.
He was in the middle of finishing a hot dog as he's throwing this dude down.
That was
it in and then goes for the next one. That is elite talent. He didn't choke. No, he kept eating. That man is incredible.
He nearly killed a man on national television. I mean,
he got away with it.
Joey
freaking Chestnut.
Hey, not only did he get away with it,
Boston, you move to the side. You're no longer a badass. Joey Jaws Chestnut has just taken your title and taken your.
Hey, I'm sorry to cut you off, Lo, but not only did he get away with it, that man is celebrated. We talking about it right now, talking about how cool he is that he just he got somebody in a chokehold and threw him down mid hot dog eating. That man is just an all-time legend. You just gotta appreciate greatness at that point.
You weren't even cutting me off because I just was gonna let all of the boys answer on this one. I have no comment at all for that. I'm just glad that y'all are happy that you got that question.
Oh, yeah.
Last one is at Travis_Cabbage, I think is how it's pronounced. He asked us, why is Carnes always superior to Campbell County? Don't worry, this is a rhetorical question.
First of all, Travis, you can go to hell. I'm 4-0 against Carnes in tennis. But the reason that happened and the reason that it's been that way historically is because at some point in the 70s, La Follette and Jacksboro High Schools merged to become Campbell County High School. So it got to the point where it's okay, you got to combine 2 teams that were both, I think, double or single A at the time that were decent programs. And then you combine them into a 5A school. And you didn't have a winning season from 1974 up until 2006. I think it was, yes, 2006, when we finally beat Carnes. Carnes was the team that Campbell County beat in order to get to its first playoff. Basketball has been okay, but no, I'm one of the more successful athletes in Campbell County history.
Yeah, put some respect on Jake Miller.
I was the most I shouldn't have played tennis, but I was so good at it that I couldn't help it. Like I'm spitting sunflower seeds on the tennis court, going around with a wad in during practice and stuff. Probably shouldn't hear that if you're from Campbell County, but oh well. Yeah, I mean, we just did our own thing, and we had fun doing it. We had fun winning.
You know, as someone that was also a high school tennis player himself, I completely envision a Campbell County high school tennis player spitting sunflower seeds and this shit. And
Only the barbecue ones.
only the barbecue ones. Fair.
Poor Jake. I just always tune into the show and I hear the Campbell County slander. And, sooner or later, Jake's going to have to, break out of the shell and stand up for himself. And I'm not going to blame him.
Oh, dude, I get invited to football games all the time. I'm like, what the hell? Why would I want to go watch that? It's like I'm perfectly fine sitting in my chair in my studio or at home playing an Xbox 360 that's 2 generations old than going up there to watch one of those games.
God.
So great.
I'm honestly just shocked that Drew didn't have a bunch of shit to say about Campbell County. He hates that place.
I hate passion. I'm there every single day. So, I pass by Campbell County High School, Jake Miller's old stomping grounds.
Yeah, $10,000 gate and a $5 fence.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect way to describe it.
I'm burning that bridge tonight.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hate that county with a passion. So I've already mentioned that multiple times, not because of you, Jake, but just because some of the, characters I have to deal with on a daily basis. But that is another conversation for another time.
Oh, man. I get it.
See, Jake knows. Jake.
Alex, you have anything to add to that?
I've never dealt with Karns or Campbell County. So I was like you, Lo, I was just letting them have it. Y'all just tear it apart.
Yeah, no Campbell County slander from me. I'm not familiar with the beef and the topic, but if you're like Karns and Campbell County arguing, in my point of view, that's just down horrendous in itself. So
I was gonna say I only stayed in Carter County, so I hung out with those boys. Elizabethton kind of ran all of that in Carter County, and I went to Elizabethton, so all them county schools were kind of just hanging out while we beat the hell out of them. But to each their own.
When I moved back from Hawaii, I went to Oak Ridge, so I'm not involved in any of this at all. Does anyone else have any final thoughts to add before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess how we opened the show, a huge, obviously been disappointing on the recruiting weekend with the huge targets, but Tennessee is still a top 15 class, has a chance to jump into the top 10, maybe even the top 5 if they're really lucky this weekend. Obviously tomorrow, Cameron Sullivan announcing, Shamurad Umarov announcing on the 8th, the next day after that. Then you got guys like Jalen Smith, the 4-star linebacker from Grayson, on the 10th. And you might still get a guy in on the 9th or the 11th. You never know what's going to happen. But I still think between now and the end of the month of July, I just think Tennessee, no matter how many losses they took, they just have dominoes continuing to fall. And props to Josh Heupel. I know there's a lot of stargazers out there that's sick and tired of them being 3 stars. But if you put the research into these recruits they're finding right now, they're going to be respecting them for, kind of going in there and finding guys early. And to see this staff evaluating them that early is kind of crazy with guys like Nathan Leacock, John Slaughter, and obviously they still have to, go through the process and sign. I know there's guys like Bear over there that he won't, put pen to paper until they're signing, on the dotted line. But to go out there and get these guys in the boat right now, like, it's pretty impressive. So just look out for those names.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what Brando said. I mean, like I said earlier, considering where we were a year ago in the recruiting stages where we were in the mid 40s, almost in the bottom of the conference, and where we are now, it's night and day for difference. And the fact that Heupel and his staff is already focusing on the 2024 class, getting Jonathan Eccles, I think that's a huge step. And getting someone as good as he is, a top 5 prospect in that class alone, get him as early as they did, that speaks volumes for what these recruits see Heupel in Tennessee at the moment. And I also think it builds a fantastic foundation for us to even potentially even have a better class for 2024 than we do this year.
I just love talking recruiting because it always gets me excited for football season. Honestly, it gets my blood boiling. I'm just ready to watch them boys play right now. It sucks that we got to wait 2 more months, I guess. But man, I don't know. Brando, you just tell me when somebody's committing and when we're about to get one. That's all I care about. Brando always dropping the nugs. Little Vol Scoops plug right there. But yeah, no, I'm just excited. I like we've been saying this for weeks. The atmosphere around Tennessee athletics is so high right now. The vibes are all great. I'm just ready to see it unfold in front of us. I want to see, like we said, the Vols signs coming back. Maybe there's a 10-win season in front of us. We just ain't seen it yet, but who knows? Don't shake y'all's heads. Drew, you don't roll your eyes. You have no room to talk. Jake, thank you. I'm glad somebody's supporting me here. But I'm just ready to see the Vols play, because anytime it's an off season, it sucks. Like I just love seeing this play. I love seeing the orange and white competing, hopefully beating the hell out of somebody, but that's just me.
Jake, you have any final thoughts?
I'm good. I appreciate you guys having me on, and can't wait to see you guys here. And we'll do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for joining us, man. It was a fucking blast for sure.
Absolutely.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for joining us, Jake, and for having us on last night. I had so much fun. Like, that was a freaking blast. So I guess I don't think we really have long to wait, though. Like, it'll be here before we know it. We'll be at our opening game, and we'll get to see how everything plays out. But I guess we're done for the evening.
Oh, one more thing. Are we going to announce the big news that we have?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, speaking of opening game, we've also got something opening up.
I guess we should announce it now, yeah. August 19th, Friday, 7 p.m., we're having our first ever live show at the Skybox downtown on Gay Street. Should be super cool. I don't want to announce who we're going to have coming yet, just because it's a little far out. But we should have at least one guest, if not potentially two guests, coming on to join us. So that's going to be awesome. Bar will stay open. Everything should be great. Looking forward to that for sure. So,
and it falls on my 22nd, so I'm hyped.
Hey, yes, sir. Happy birthday.
We'll be in Knox lit with the boys and Low.
And me. Yeah.
And the host.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
Hey, but that'll also be the first full ATB meetup too. All four of us in the same place at one time. So I mean, we just breaking grounds right here. That's all I'm saying.
Big year for us for sure. All right. Well, I'm good. I'm signing off. I'm tired. So
yeah, for sure. Jake, thank you for joining us. Blast with everyone else always.
Jake, thank you.
Good night. Good Vols.
Yep,
Go Vols.
Go Vols.